everybody, Tommy Tables here. Welcome back to That Park Place behind the scenes in the membership lounge. It is the return of Martin, Nolan, and myself as the still nameless group. However, we are settling on this, somehow it returned. And in this particular instance, the thing that has returned is, drumroll please, Nintendo Power. Ta-da! No? Anyone?
Oh,
no?
Yeah.
Here, hey.
I love you, Nintendo Power.
There we go. That was that was a reaction.
I didn't know that was our cue.
Sorry about that.
Man. I'll throw a parade for Nintendo Power. I will gladly do it. I'll go to every stranger on the street and give them a flyer that says, "Hey, come celebrate Nintendo Power." And I might feel very old doing it, but you know what? I might get someone to show up. Maybe my grandma.
So Nintendo, yeah. So believe it or not, Nintendo has been around for a while. It's been around longer than the Switch and longer than the Wii.
It's been around. Nintendo is an over 100-year-old company.
100-year? Wait, what?
Yeah. It's an over 100-year-old company. Before they went into video games, they used to do like toys and such like that. They went into a lot of different aspects, such as keeping it PG here, romance hotels. They did an avenue in that one point. What I believe what got them their start was there was a time when I believe some sort of like card games were kind of seen as like gambling, and it was like banned in Japan, and they were like a distributor of like kind of cards, but they had to like adapt to some of the laws and stuff. And then when they were trying to do the toys, and I think it wasn't really catching on, so they shifted focus to video games, and they got to work with a very talented Miyamoto, and the rest was history, and they've surrounded themselves with a lot of talent. But fun fact, if any of you guys have ever played the video game Pikmin 2 on GameCube, Wii, and Switch, in the game, you excavate, which is a place that could be a post-apocalyptic Earth, but nowadays it might not be the case of that. But you go through, and they had like a lot of brand deals in that game, because you had to like mine for treasure to pay off a big debt in the game.
Okay.
So while you're excavating the plant with your Pikmin, you're pulling up things like Duracell batteries and like rob the robot's head and stuff like that and cashing them in for money. But some of the things you find in the game aren't just like, I don't know, Crest toothpaste. You also find like old little like trinkets that Nintendo actually used to produce themselves. It's really fascinating.
Wow. Well, I'm still kind of wrapping my head around the fact that Nintendo used to be a company that set up by the hour hotels for
let's try to keep it vague before Jonas kills us. But
I know.
If you guys want to see a whole episode on that, no, I'm kidding.
Good gravy. That
maybe
I'm in shock. I didn't realize that. Wow.
You didn't know that? Yo.
No, I did not. I just thought they were
my next video.
Yeah, seriously. Well, I just thought they were a company that kind of, formed around the Nintendo. I didn't realize that they were involved in love hotels and toys and other.
I don't think they did very well in it, though. I don't think the toys maybe were okay, but I think the hotels thing was brief.
Japan's population is in decline, so obviously that's the case. Yeah,
it's Nintendo's fault. Thanks, Pyra.
Yeah. Well, anyway,
physical media.
Yeah, so we're talking about Nintendo Power, and this isn't some sort of, racial slogan or something along those lines. This is actually referring to an old magazine. It is.
I have never connected those two together, but okay, cool.
We're really going off the rails. Love hotels and slogans. Anyway, so all that to be said, Nintendo Power used to be a magazine, and so they used to have these things before the internet, which were kind of like books but were floppier, and they had words and pictures printed on them. For all of you youngins in the audience who might not know what I'm talking about.
This is how you got your news back then.
Yes. So Nintendo Power was a magazine that was basically all about Nintendo, and at the time when it came out, the Nintendo Entertainment System, the NES, had launched, and it was just the biggest
future.
It was huge. Like, I mean, it was gangbusters. It took the world by storm. And when was it launched? Like 1980 or 19?
The NES itself, I believe, came out in, oh my god, I am so sorry if I get this wrong. You can probably steal my Nintendo fanboy card because
This is a test.
it gets wrong. But
This is a test.
Super Mario Brothers came out in 1985. But I
Okay.
know before they made the pack-in title, they had a version that just came with Rob the Robot. I think that came out in 85, but I could be wrong. Could be wrong.
Well, and obviously, of course, it came out earlier than that in Japan. It was based on the Famicom system. And much like many things in the 80s, it was ported over from Japan and sort of Americanized, just like things like Transformers, and a bunch of other stuff too. So Nintendo though was huge because prior to that, you had Atari, like you had the Atari 2600. I had one of those, and I mean it was you know, kind of pixels bouncing around here and there, but the Nintendo was really, really revolutionary. And I remember getting the Nintendo when it was released. I was a very lucky boy. My mother spoiled me. Um, and
That's how most gamers are born. They have very lucky to have very good parents that will spoil them with these video game systems.
My
I mean,
older sister went half in with my parents. She spent her allowance money, half of it bought the NES, and they covered the other half.
wow. Well, I just recall that, you know, you can play Super Mario today. My kids are playing Super Mario. Like they love Super Mario Maker. They're making their levels and whatnot. But it's kind of mind-blowing to think that the graphics from Mario, the original Super Mario, were cutting edge at one point. And I know
I would argue that they actually still hold up to a degree. Not that, of course, it's dated, but there's a lot of good color usage and such to where, because you take like a Tiger Electronic game, it looks like a calculator. An Atari 2600 is amazing. I have one myself. It's super retro, but you know what? It's kind of like a toy. You play with it for a little bit, and it's kind of what your imagination does with this. This was kind of the first time you brought like kind of like Pac-Man to where you had to do a lot of skill work. The world felt so much bigger and such, and to where it was something that you kind of brought around and celebrated, if that makes sense. Like you could kind of build your own little world out with this game itself. And like Mario, you think like this is the first like tried and true adventure game, because other games had like such limitations. This one, you have clouds, you have sea, you have cave. All the characters are so animated, even if the clouds and the bushes are literally the same sprite, just recolored green and white. But it feels like more like you're kind of stepping into a fantasy land, or maybe I'm looking too deep into it. I'm not for sure there, but
no, I mean,
go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, like, of course, like, you're not looking too deep into it at all. Like, I think, well, yeah, you are. But what I mean by that is that when you step back and you look at the concept of Mario, it's like somebody literally was on mushrooms when they came up with it. You know, a fat Italian plumber going through interdimensional pipes, stomping duck things with turtle shells and wings that can fly, and fighting a giant dog spiky shelled creature called Bowser.
And no one knew what these things were called in the 80s too, so they probably had to come up with their own names. It's like, what would you call a Goomba? Because Goombas don't look like anything. I guess they kind of look like mushrooms, but like I wonder what kind of nicknames they came up with them. Also, random note, I did check the research. The NES came out in North America in 1985.
There we go.
And the Famicom came out in 83. So
okay. So, I mean, all that to be said, this was obviously much, much, much earlier than the World Wide Web or the internet or even whatever experiments DARPA was employing. And, you know, you could not just Google the answer to a question. Like you got stuck in a level on Mario or whatever on the internet. You were like, oh, sorry, on the Nintendo. You were kind of screwed. And the Nintendo was
especially if you're playing against the Yellow Devil in Mega Man 1. My God.
I mean, about anything, like these games, they did not have save game functions, right? Like, so I mean,
no,
you could go as far as you could, and when you die, like you were done. And you had to
they made them so hard. Like literally, like I think that was a part of I could be wrong. It also could be that everybody was new at this, so they weren't as good at game design back then. But they made these games so hard so it lasted because they anticipated that you had to wait to buy them again. And like they think like, okay, we need to make a product that lasts like very long, that people are going to get a lot of enjoyment out, a lot of bang for their buck. And then it's a big purchase the next time they get them. Shoot, nowadays you launch a game that's like 10% done at $70. Like,
yeah, and the games all started, and eventually they were designed for consoles, but early games were arcade games. They wanted you to pump in as many quarters as possible, so they made it just hard enough and just fun enough that you just keep pumping in those quarters, and then they ported them over to these home systems.
yeah.
And they sure ported them over.
Very true.
I don't think I ever completed a single game on the Nintendo.
Did you not know about the warp zones in Mario 1? Because I can tell you where those are.
Well,
or
you know what?
Just look up Nintendo Power.
Yeah, well, exactly.
There we go.
So this is what I'm getting at. So when Nintendo came out, people were demanding. They were trying to figure out, how do I beat these games? What are some of the tricks? Like, how are people enjoying them? Like, where are these games coming from? And so it started off with this Nintendo Fun Club, which was published in 1987. And that was just basically a little bit of a newsletter. Wow. But it was not enough. And so there was Howard Phillips, who was the Fun Club president. And he was able to leverage the excitement about it to create Nintendo Power, which was I think Nolan's got a copy of it right there behind him.
Oh wait, you said that? I also got this one.
You got that one too. Hang on, let me put you on as the
primary screen here.
As the primary
just
screen.
So everyone see Bowser and its beauty.
Yeah,
actually, I have a better one. I have a more fitting one right now. Actually, I got this one. This is the 100th issue they had of Nintendo Power. Nice. And to make a statement here, this isn't all of the ones I have, but I like Nintendo Power. No. I also like Tommy. Tommy was the primary screen there for a minute. But yeah, I like... Oh, God. Oh, God. The magazine just fell off there and whacked my cat, and she went running away. I'm sorry, girl. I'm sorry. Oh. Uh-oh. You okay? Y'all okay? Oh, man. It was just a magazine. I think she's fine. But it's like, oh, man. I'm so sorry.
She's going to be she's going to be a Sega cat now.
Yeah, she's going to be a Sega cat. She's all about Sega.
Sega.
Oh my gosh, this is why Genesis does what Nintendo don't, because they're not painful. But yeah, no, I went to a store a few years ago and they had a bunch of Nintendo Power magazines. I bought a bunch of them. I also have a bunch of them towards the end of the line of the before the magazine stopped in 2012. I got a bunch of the issues because that's when I was getting into it. So I got into it around their Twilight years. You okay? You okay? Make sure she's okay. Make sure she's okay. Kitty. She's good. Thankfully, we endorse make sure our kitties are okay in the show. But I got a bunch of the ones like of the Twilight years of the magazine. In fact, my dad actually picked up 2 magazines for me from Kmart, I believe it was, in like 2012. That way I'd have 2 issues of the last issue, which actually mimics the first issue, which has the last issue has Mario and Bowser and like a claymation. The first ever issue that came out in the 80s has Mario and Wart because Mario 2 is the brand new game coming out. I don't have the first issue, unfortunately, but I have a lot of the ones that tend to come from like the late 90s. I got like Pokemon.
Oh, man.
I got whatever this hodgepodge is with the Tetris block in the corner. Got the Mario Party, the Pokemon Gold and Silver. The Majora's Mask one is one of my favorite. I even have we were just talking about Pikmin 2. Here we go. Here's like a GameCube era one. I love these. I love these things so much. You could open them up and you could see like guides and tips on what to do. And there was like artwork included. It wasn't just a boring like post on like, I guess you wouldn't go to Facebook for gaming advice.
Not in 88, you wouldn't.
You could get tips on Catwoman, the video game.
Jeez.
We're talking about maybe one day we need to talk about that game one day. And then they also included a Catwoman pinup poster. That's
different from the Nintendo Power that I used to collect. Like I I remember signing up for it when it did come out in 87, 88, and
Mhm.
it was a blast. Like it and I'm gonna pull up a copy of somebody who had scanned it in, and I'm really kind of sad because of the fact that I had these magazines and I threw them all away
No.
at a certain time when I just realized that
Oh,
I didn't have any space for them. And so, hindsight is 2020. But the magazines themselves, as you said, Nolan, they featured reader commentary. They had letters. They had these really cool little
Q&A
comics,
sections.
Q&A sections. They had maps of the levels. Like they had these pull out maps. Like how centerfolds that you'd have in like Playboy, for example. This
no, I don't
you
know
would
that.
pull. Yeah,
Oh,
I don't
I'm
know
sorry.
that
No,
either.
we don't know. We read Nintendo Power for the advertisements.
We do, but like you could pull out like actual like full blown maps of these levels, and they helped people. Like this was how people were able to figure out how to beat these games. So this magazine was it was just a lot of fun, and it was really neat. And it had these two characters named Nestor, and I believe the other guy's name was Howard. And basically, they looking at it now, you can see the anime influence, the manga influence in it before I guess manga ever became really popular in North America.
This was back when they'd make fun of you for watching anime.
Yeah, that is very true. This was much before it was cool. So the magazine was great. It was really, I would almost say, a little bit ahead of its time. And you could, in my case, there were no retail outlets for it. Like you had to actually subscribe for it. And so
And get it routinely every month. How much was that? Do you remember?
I can't remember. I really can't, but I remember cherishing each of those magazines when they would arrive and reading them just like cover to cover, going through them all.
Look
They
at
were
every
amazing.
detail of the page. Figure out
Yeah.
Zelda Ocarina of Time for $40 in this. What the heck?
And it was like one of those things where you look back at it and you think, is this how people used to react when they were doing mail order from Sears, for example, and waiting for their items to arrive and so on and so forth.
There's our next episode. Somehow Sears returned.
Somehow Sears returned. Yeah, seriously.
Oh, that makes me sad.
Oh, no, we're a happy show.
No, I loved Sears. That's why it makes me sad. I could get tools. I could get a shirt. It was great. But now there's Bass Pro, so.
So, Nintendo Power was just a fantastic magazine, but like all things, the internet ultimately ended up killing it, unfortunately. But it really had a lot of great quality stuff in it. And the other thing too is that these games,
I love that cover.
well, and this is it, right? Today, for example, if you're interested in a game, you just go on YouTube and you look at the trailer, or you watch someone's walkthrough, or you watch them play the game, or what
You
have you.
needed maps back then of like the military base. Like you had to figure out like systematic, but they put so much charm in every page, to really kind of get deep into the experience. It's part of a game is how you role play with it, and it worked really well.
But the
By
other
the way, guys, I dropped a link to the original Nintendo Power that somebody put up on archive.org.
oh my,
Okay.
Check that out.
I'm gonna pull that up actually. But where I was going with this though is the fact that, and gosh, I feel like we sound like a bunch of back in my day, we had to walk
Back
10
in
miles.
my day, there was none of this internet garbage. We had our Playboys. Dang it!
But you couldn't really, like, if you were interested in another game, all you could really do was look at the cover of the game if you were in a store and they had it there, or try to catch a random commercial on TV. Like you did not have the opportunity to actually see what these other games were like, because a lot of the people who were into Nintendo at the time, well, at least in my circle, were kids, and we got allowances. We had we weren't exactly floating in cash. So Nintendo Power was also a way for you to kind of see what these other games were like. It was the closest you could get to, testing them out before you bought them.
You had to experience it and be part of like the the culture of like what was going on, like this hot new thing. It was a cheap alternative that the parents were like, okay, yeah, that'd be cool. We can do something like that. And having an element such as this to present itself would open up a whole new plethora of like, because back then you could only go by like, you saw like a game. If you didn't see the commercial, you see a bunch of games on the shelves at a physical store, and you see like the cover art, which like take like Legend of Zelda, it doesn't even show any screenshots of the game. It's just the cover art.
Actually,
Which
with
is
Legend
really cool, mind you.
are you talking about the box or Nintendo Power?
Yeah, the NES box. The NES box. It's just like the really cool gold shield thing. Maybe you'll get like 2 or 3 screenshots in the back, and then you ask the random dude at the rental store. It's like, hey, is this good or is Back to the Future on NES better? Like, he'll tell you at least what he knows. But it was limited info. But like here, if you see like Zelda plastered all over, it's like, whoa, I need to be playing this game because this is the hottest thing in town.
Yeah. So, I mean, going through this, man, I'm getting overwhelmed with nostalgia. Thank you for dropping this link, Martin. This is really
cool.
Thank you.
And you can see just how much information is in here, right? Like you have paragraphs and sentences going on and on for pictures that are basically, like 8 pixel. It's hilarious. There's Nestor, yeah. And so you had reader questions. So you would actually write out your question on a piece of paper, put it into an envelope, get a stamp and mail it off, and then hope for the best and hope that someone would actually respond to it. Yeah, I know I'm being
one of my favorite things.
I know a lot of the people who are listening. I know
one of my favorite things.
Sorry, go on.
Oh, okay. One of my favorite things was when they did the contests. And so they'd be like, okay, we're going to give you a free game or you'll have a chance to get your name in a game. We'll get back to that in a second. You'll get a prize if you give us a screenshot and show that you beat like a really hard game, like Ghosts and Goblins or something. If you give us a screenshot of it says a picture of you beating the game, we'll do it. Just got sent to the mail. So you go and you play the game. And you get the camera, and you take a picture of it. You got to wait like a week to get it developed. And then you get it back, it ends up looking like garbage because it's just a bright screen because you couldn't check to see how the photo looked. And it's like, well, do I send this to the magazine now? Like, because the technology was so primitive trying to do those contests. But there is a funny story with that. And I can go into it. But would you like to continue your point, Tommy? Because I can tell them that later.
Well, I mean, all I was gonna say was the fact that I just completely got derailed right now. My gosh, I was what was I talking about?
While you catch up, I'll tell them the story then.
All right, go ahead.
Are any of you guys familiar with the Chris Houlihan room?
No.
Yes.
Okay, you are. Okay, cool. So in A Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past on Super Nintendo, there is a secret room that I believe is only accessible through cheats. I believe, I could be wrong. It's called the Chris Houlihan room. So I think the story goes that Nintendo Power, even though this is a Japanese game, Nintendo Power ran a contest and it was like beat something with one of the Final Fantasy games or something. So this Chris Houlihan kid won and he got to have his name in A Link to the Past in like a secret room. Of course, it wasn't easy to access. He had to get a cheating device. So big prize there. But the guy's name now lives in, I won't say infamy, but it's really cool. Could you imagine being like, yeah, that's me. I was in a Zelda game. Like, and I think in Japan it's called something different, but it's insane because they had connections like with Nintendo. This was a Nintendo publication. I think towards the end of the years, like GameCube era onward, I could be wrong. I think they went a little bit separate from Nintendo. Like they were kind of their own publication, like kind of more like EGM, I think. But they still had connections with Nintendo. I believe in the last issue, Reggie gave some thoughts on things, but especially the early days, they were so tightly knit with Nintendo, they could get all this cool information for people. It was insane. And that alien is scary, and I like it.
Well, I mean, sorry, go on, Martin.
Oh, I loved Contra, but I was going to say, if you pop over to page 94, it's not just video games. It's also movies and celebrity profiles.
Wait, really?
Right.
Oh, yeah.
I forgot about that.
Oh.
There we go.
Oh
Big
my
Top
gosh,
Pee
Pee
Wee.
Wee Herman.
Kirk Cameron.
Kirk Cameron, my gosh. Yeah, he was a heartthrob at one point. There's the mailbox. take your best shot. Oh, and that's right. They had people sending in their high scores and whatnot.
Oh yeah.
I forgot.
So
about
was Howard there? Was he the founder of Nintendo Power then? Or was that what
Yeah,
you're
so
saying?
he seems to
That
be
dude
like,
is cool. I respect that dude. Hats off to him.
who? Howard?
Yes.
Yeah. So I think he was the creator of the fan club, and then it
Because
just
I've heard
kind
of Howard Lincoln, and I'm like, I feel like I've seen that guy in an interview before. I didn't know if they were the same dude or not. So I need to do some Nintendo background research and such. But props to that dude, because without him, we wouldn't have this here today.
Oh man, I remember this too, the top 30. Like, you were always curious about which games were the top 10 and so on and so forth. And then looking back at it, I'm pretty sure these polls were rigged, but you never know.
Can
Oh
we go
yeah,
back
no.
to the picture with
Funny
Howard in
fact.
it?
Oh, go ahead.
Can
Yeah,
we go back to
sure.
the picture with Howard in it? Because is that for a second I thought that was the 11th Doctor, but in
Yeah.
1988.
No kidding.
That'd be a nice
Like him.
twist.
Well, just zipping back to Contra for a second though, it's funny how looking back at things, you kind of realize
Schwarzenegger and Stallone.
Schwarzenegger and Stallone fighting James
An
Cameron's
alien.
Alien, or Ridley Scott's Alien, basically.
But you know what? That's the
And this
beauty of it. Because if this was done nowadays, they would make it. They'd be like, okay, we'll take the
Oblivion.
Alien IP name and then we'll change everything about it so we can do what they want. They were smart here. You didn't have to reinvent it. They take a few different things, throw them in a blender together, and bam, you got Contra.
Yeah, it's wild. I'm ashamed to admit this, but this is the first time I'm realizing it looking at this photo.
Oh yeah,
That's
no, I had to
exactly
cheat from someone else's observation.
Wow. No, this magazine, my gosh. Yeah, and you had players polls, you could mail stuff in. They talked about the books, they had arcade stands. Pee Wee Herman. And
What was your
Cameron,
guys' first issue? Like, how did you guys get introduced to it?
I think it was a friend from school who had gotten one. And I read through it and I thought this was just like the most coolest thing ever. I really, really
That
want
picture.
it. And so I begged my mom to ask if we could get a subscription. And she said yes. So I'm just trying to see, do they have the prices here?
I remember the commercials, and my younger brother
Oh, yeah.
got a subscription.
Yeah, that's right. The commercials.
Can I make you guys feel old as dirt for a minute?
Sure.
My first exposure to this was Angry Video Game Nerd. I
Wow.
saw his Nintendo Power video and I thought it was the funniest thing ever. But he also, even if it was more of satire, like I was just opened in this gateway. He was talking about how amazing this magazine was. And I saw the picture. I'm like, this thing is amazing. And so when I saw it finally on the shelves in like the late early 2010s, I'm like, yo, I got to get in on this. And it was almost dying at that point. But I got to be a part of it for a little bit and I was so happy.
Oh man, you're making me feel old. Okay, I'm gonna zoom in. I want to see it because I see it says special introductory rate of $15. I'll save $6 off the cover price. So I guess each magazine was like $15, eh?
No, I think that's a subscription.
Was that the full subscription for the year?
I think, yeah, it had to be a subscription.
Okay, because don't forget, like I
want to subscribe to Nintendo Power for the special introductory offer.
$15. I'll save $6 off the cover price. Interesting. So I mean, it wasn't. I guess it wasn't that cheap, was it? Anyway, I mean, I was also living up in Canada, so we had our own kind of funny money up there, but it was great.
And Toonies and whatnot.
Loonies and Toonies, like you had basically like 110 pages of content every month, and it wasn't just like stuff that was repurposed or reused from other places. Like again, this was before Photoshop. This was before software editing and whatnot. These were people somehow grabbing these screenshots and plastering them in by hand into these magazines, doing up all of these custom cartoons, all of the text. Like there was a lot of effort that went into these magazines. Like it was, looking back at it now, I'm actually kind of amazed at it. Like it was really dense.
so much work, and you had to wait like every month for it to come around. So it was like a big event whenever it happened. You always wondered what the new cover would be,
Yeah.
which some covers would come out and it'd be like really cool. Other ones would be really scary, and the parents would get mad because it would give kids nightmares. But they were just so much integral part. They had to have like a whole team. They had reoccurring characters. There was so much the way into it. And it's beautiful that we lived in a time where all this money and contribution could go into it, and all the love and the passion, because a lot of these people I would assume are really into gaming and such. It's almost kind of like finding like an old gaming website where it's like it was built by people who really knew this stuff, and it was actually the most profitable way of doing it was doing it in this style, and it just came around to something beautiful. And you need more of that. You need people who just have a passion for it. Like, look at that picture of Howard there with, go back a page, with him with the TV there, and you just seems so happy with his Mario 2. Like, that just makes me smile.
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, so guys, if I want to ask you, what was your like each of you, like what was your favorite game, or what was a memorable gaming experience for you with the Nintendo when you were growing up, or rediscovering it, as the case may be in Nolan's particular example?
Wait, which example? Which example? Wait, I've made a lot. Which one?
No. I'm just saying, like,
you mean rage-inducing moments?
well, anything that stands out to you.
Oh
Martin,
man, like a
Martin,
Nintendo magazine.
Ugh, okay.
Martin, kick
Like
off.
connects to the magazine?
No, just ask, like, just Nintendo game, like a Nintendo NES experience.
All right. I loved Mega Man. I loved that game, and tying in Nintendo Power. I never would have known the cycle you had to beat the bad guys in, the mini bosses in,
Right.
because okay, may have to explain this to some of the whippersnappers, but you had to beat somebody like Cutsman to beat somebody else, because the Cutsman power was the weak link for this other guy. And once you had his power, you go fight this guy, and once you had that guy's power, you can go fight this guy.
It was rock, paper, scissors, but with bosses.
Yeah.
Right. In fact, there was a Rockman and a Scissor Man.
Exactly. And you could pick the
But there
order,
wasn't a
which
paper.
unlike other games, you could pick the order you wanted to fight the bosses in too. So you could go in blind like, hey, let's go into this level, and then you get absolutely wrecked by the boss.
Yeah,
You don't have
right.
his weakness.
Half the time I didn't even make it to the boss to realize I needed another power. But in
I know.
Japan,
And then you get to the end of the game and you get to fight the Yellow Devil, and then I can still hear that song in my memories. It's in
But
my dreams.
I was going to say that the actual Japanese version of Mega Man, I believe his name was Rockman.
Yes. Because you had the his sister, so you had Rock and you had Roll, so Rock and Roll.
And then the dog in the third one was bass or something like that. Wasn't there a bass and a treble at some point?
And then it gets even better in the later, like the Mega Man X games on like PlayStation. Because then when they were doing like the translation, I don't think this was in the original. I could have been. They were naming bosses after members of Guns N' Roses. It was great.
Right, yeah.
Oh my God. Well, in Nolan, how about you? Do you have a particularly fond Nintendo memory of the NES?
Well, let me try to get rid of that bad memory right there. And that was an anniversary collection. So that was the NES anyways. My favorite NES memory is actually playing with my mom. I think my dad might have been there too. Like playing, we got an NES from a flea market and playing the original Super Mario Brothers and beating it, and learning the trick that if you hold the A button and push start, you can just start at the beginning of the world as opposed to the beginning of the game. That was great. That was really great.
Man.
Oh man, it was it was a really, that I think that's my favorite NES experience. And there's something that I can't stress this enough. There's something that's so awesome, because the nice thing with NES games is they actually are pretty well designed. Most of the most memorable ones, like your Nintendo in-house games like Mario, Zelda, or something big like Capcom or something with Mega Man. But so you can play those games on modern systems and they actually hold up extremely well. But I'll tell you, playing it on those original like funky controllers, opening the lid to put in the NES thing like it's a VHS tape, like there's something that's extremely charming about it. It's like icing on top of a cake. And if you can play original, I'd say go for it, especially if you can play on like an old TV. It's awesome.
You know what? I was mistaken. So in two instances, so Nintendo Power wasn't a monthly magazine; it was a bi-monthly magazine.
Ooh,
And the
at
second
least give them
thing,
some more time.
yeah, and then the second thing is they had. I remember this, the Power line to the pros, where you actually could call somebody, you would pay by the minute, and they would give you tips on how to beat the game. And can you imagine that job, sitting in a call
Like,
center?
could you
waiting-
imagine that if it still existed today?
I'd be, yeah, well, not, I can't even see that.
You know,
Well,
Like
one of
it's
our
like
members.
you call them up, and they're gonna ask you like the dumbest questions or whatever. They're gonna ask you like things that people like on the staff couldn't answer. They're like, "Is Luigi in Mario 64?" They're like, "No, I'm not a data miner."
yeah, but they wouldn't do that though, because you would have to pay to call these people up, right? So you're not calling them up just to prank them. Like you're actually calling them up with legit questions, I think.
Yeah, it shows up
True.
on your bill at the end of the month.
Yeah.
Or mom and
And
dad.
they should really give. I think I heard, wasn't it Nintendo Power? It could have been another one where they would sometimes give long, drawn out answers to make the call go longer. Am I wrong on that?
Oh, that
I
was
think
all sorts of them.
I think that was
Yeah.
the more adult ones, perhaps.
Okay. I
Like
can
the
give
way
you a fun
dogs hit
fact
each
then if we're
one?
going into that. Roger Rabbit on NES. There is a sequence in the game where you have to call a number, and I believe it's to get in contact with Jessica Rabbit. It would play like a pre-recorded message so you could continue in the game with that password. But I think the call line expired and it got used for something else later on. The NES game would tell you to go to that. So
That's
there you
happened a
go.
bunch of times where like some phone number is showing up and then like it ended up turning a little blue. But I will share this with you guys. One of the games that I ended up getting was the first Dragon Quest game.
Ooh.
And this was my first experience with a role-playing game, like an online role-playing game before. And I remember being extremely disappointed because, again, I didn't see any commercials for it. All I could see was the back of the box, or what I'd heard about it. And I thought that, so I popped it in, started it up, started wandering around, and within the first couple of minutes after talking to the king and getting your weapons and whatnot, you venture out into the forest and you get attacked by a slime. So I'm like, all right, this is really cool. Like, okay, you can see your fighter there. It's kind of like one of those Pokemon screens. And it didn't move. They just kind of like wiggled a little bit whenever you had it. Like I'd never experienced turn-based combat before. So I'm like,
Your
I
first
thought,
RPG.
I thought they would move. I thought they were like, why are they not moving? Like, what the hell is this? And so I was so disappointed by that. I recall that I put the game away for a while, but then I went back to it eventually and I kept playing it. But it's sort of interesting now, like when you compare it to an RPG of today, like Final Fantasy 15 or 16 or 15, sorry, for example, and just how wild the animations are and whatnot. And going back
Yeah,
to
they don't even got time for menus then. It's like go, go, go.
yeah, so that was I guess that was a moment of naivete on my part. But I'd have to say one of the most memorable games that does stick out for me though was Battletoads. And that game was, I remember when it came out, it was beautiful. Like the graphics, they kept being able to squeeze more and more out of that.
Rareware, baby. They knew how to make graphics. Like, I don't know what kind of black magic Rare used, but every system they did, they made some of the best looking games on the console.
It was wild. And so like the animation of the sprites, the comic book style, like where you get a giant fist and blam and whatnot, that really spoke to me. The game was hard as you wouldn't believe, and I barely made it. Like, I did not get through that game. I didn't finish that game, I'll tell you that much. But that was a lot of fun. And do any of you guys ever remember the movie The Wizard?
I love
Yes.
Yes.
I've actually never seen it. I know, weird for me, but like I've never seen it, but I know I can quote that movie like night and day. I love the Power Glove. So bad.
The lead singer of Rilo Kiley is the girl in that movie.
No kidding.
No kid.
Wow. But when that movie came out, it was a phenomenon. Like every kid in my school wanted to go see that. We went to go see it on opening day. Like it was, and when they revealed Super Mario Brothers 3, like
and it's Super Mario Brothers 3.
It was essentially a giant a video game commercial in the form of a movie. but it paid
And
off.
a Universal Studios commercial as well.
Yeah, and it was just like, for a young kid who was so into Nintendo and stuff, it was a wonderful, wonderful movie experience. They really played
That
that
poster
well.
makes me smile. Like that, I love that poster.
Thinking about his older brother carrying around the Nintendo system into every motel room they're in,
Yep.
as they're tracking him down, and the dad getting addicted to playing too.
It was wild.
This movie, man, this
But
movie.
It was probably one of the best product tie-in movies that has ever been done. Like they were able to wrap like a video game launch. Like they were able to create a video game launch in a movie, and I think the movie did gangbusters with that. Like you could never do that today. Like that's just that would never happen. But
Like you go to see Avengers and you see the debut of Halo 7 on there.
Yeah, seriously. But it sort of just goes to show you, has something been lost? Do we have our rose tinted glasses on for the 80s a bit too much, or the 80s and 90s?
Oh yeah, no, something's been lost. Like, well, the nice thing is this is my interpretation of things, especially as someone who didn't grow up in the same era, I'm guessing, as you guys did. I noticed okay, old man. But what I noticed is I've noticed this in a trend of like with bad movies lately, because I've been thinking about this. Bad movies from like the 90s and the 80s are so much better than bad movies that come out now, because there's just a charm, because everything's so authentic. They just put everything in front of like a green screen now and like make some animations of it. It's very soulless, very corporate, and it's like, oh, this sucks. Back then, even if something was kind of bad, it had like a charm to it because they had to put so much time and energy on it. So you just get, even, it's one of those, like, even if something wasn't good, it's like when you see someone light themselves on fire, like it's a monstrosity, but at the same time, you can't look away. Like,
how often do you see someone light themselves on fire, though?
not very often, thankfully, but well, you never know these days.
Oh,
Martin's like, I see it every day.
Man, he has a tragic backstory, I'm telling you.
You haven't seen what I have seen.
Well, guys, any final comments or thoughts about Nintendo before we wrap up this episode?
I think that Dead Reckoning is going to end with the introduction of the MetaQuest 4.
You think so?
Oh man. Okay.
What are you holding up there, Nolan? Hang on a second.
This is a kid in a Starmie outfit. They're having kids Pokemon outfits, and that kid, I gotta say, those are good outfits. Like,
that terrified Pikachu is wonderful.
Yeah, that is pretty.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Actually, oh hey, here's a little thing too where you can reach out to Nintendo Power. And I
was gonna say that Pikachu kid is probably like 40 right now.
Yeah.
Oh my God, no, that can't be that. No, I don't think so.
I know. Yeah. Legitimate final thought on Nintendo Power.
Yeah.
Get the power.
Yes. You guys go first. I'll try to find a good page to end us off on.
It was great to be able to, in a pre-internet era, go and see the level, the side-scrolling level of, Mario 3, or the overworld level of Legend of Zelda, figure out where the secrets were. It really was a big advantage in those games.
Go on.
Would like to say, sorry, Tommy. I just want to say, like, this is one of the most Nintendo things I've ever seen in my life. Like, this magazine, I cannot stress enough how wonderful, like, from the start up and at the end, like, everything, it evolved with the times, and it just represents everything Nintendo is in era. And Nintendo is one of those companies where they put so much time and energy. Nintendo's done a lot of horrible things over the years, like of other major corporations. But I will say Nintendo has found a way to get some of the most talented, creative people on this planet, and has created stuff that has defined generations, and is something that everybody can celebrate and have. One of the biggest highlights of your life is celebrating these games and the memories you create with them in very different ways. And this magazine, I think, is one of the things, because if you just need to get an idea without playing a game of what the feel of Nintendo is and what the world was like, and for all the fans that are out there, this magazine sums it up. And if you see a issue of Nintendo Power, I'd say, pick it up if you want to see what it's like. It might not do as much use for finding tips these days, but if you just are really into Nintendo and just want to get a feeling of a time that's been gone but can be brought into your modern age, check it out, because this stuff, it was great.
And yeah, on that note, I really do have to say there was something, there still is something wholesome about Nintendo.
Yes.
It's safe content. It's trusted content. It's family friendly.
Especially those love hotels.
Especially those love hotels. Yeah, it's kind of funny. They did the exact opposite of most other corporations in our society these days. Or they had the opposite route, I mean. But no, like it does my heart so good to see that Nintendo has still stayed true to its roots, unlike so many other companies. Yeah. Well, I'm not even that, like, Disney, for example. But seeing the success of the Super Mario Brothers movie, seeing my kids loving Mario, Zelda, my kids asking me, like,
and as they were back then, within reason. Like, they didn't change for the time. Like, Peach is still as much Peach as she was back then. Bowser is still Bowser. It's like the Mario movie, like, people are loving it. And it's kind of funny to me because I'm like, of course, I saw it twice in theaters. I was a dork about that movie. But when it's funny because, like, these attributes of the characters, like Bowser being a bit more of his comedic side, Peach's more strong-willed side, and leadership side, most of the mainstream didn't see that. They might have just played the side scrolls and didn't see the extra aspect. But that stuff has been there for years, and it just holds the test of time. You see a lot of companies, they feel like they need to be ashamed of their past, or they need to change what it was. And if you put quality people in the right places and don't just chase dollar signs every time, like, you keep a core brand there, you're going to have profits for decades and decades to come. And not just that, you're going to create something more special, which is, like, I'd say memories. And, like, I think it's amazing that you can share that connection with your kid, dude.
Yeah, I mean, they were able to like, so many companies have dropped the ball when it comes to generational capture. Star Wars.
What, you didn't go see Yogi Bear, the CGI movie in 2010 with your kids?
Yeah. No, but I mean, like, Nintendo is one of those few companies that has that magic formula. Whatever it is, they've been able to take these characters, which have existed for 40 years, and still keep them appealing to the next generation of kids. And I have no doubt this is going to keep continuing. So whatever they're doing works. And it's really neat to see how they've evolved and yet still stuck to, well, they've still done right by their characters and their IP, which is really rare and unfortunately very rare in this day and age. But on that note, Nolan, Martin, I want to thank you once again for this wonderful conversation. Audience members, if you liked hearing about this, if you want to talk more Nintendo, please let us know down below. Leave us your thoughts, your comments. Are there topics that you think we should talk about? Are there obscure items that we should shine the bright light of modern day onto and examine? What would you suggest? Do you guys have a name for us? Let us know your thoughts.
Please give us name suggestions. Please. Suddenly blank returned, but we need something to fill that middle spot there. And we can't just say every episode suddenly Nintendo Power returned, or else that'll be a copyright issue. And we'd like to keep the show going personally.
It's true, actually. Maybe we couldn't. Okay, well,
I thought we were saying a name for us, like the Reanimators or the Nostalgia Guys.
Nostalgia Bait.
That's the Nostalgia Bait.
I don't know. I got nothing. That's why we need your help.
Good night, folks.
Yeah, that's all we got. So, guys, listen. Thank you very much, audience members. Thank you for. We lost Nolan. Okay, no, there he is.
I tried to get my cats to come up, but both of them just bailed them. I think they're upset about getting attacked by the magazine.
Well, hopefully they'll forgive you after a week or so. But on that note, I hope everyone has a wonderful day, night, weekend, wherever you are, wherever you're listening to. Thanks for being a member of That Park Place, where all the news should be fun, including Blast from the Past. And we will talk to you soon.
We hope you enjoyed this presentation of the Lost Guys here on That Pod Place. Be sure to subscribe for more content like it, and you can become a member at That Park Place here on YouTube to see more of the Lost Guys every Friday as soon as the guys record an episode. Let us know your thoughts on this intriguing topic in the comments down below. Please comment, like, and share this video, and don't forget to subscribe to That Park Place Podcasts Online, your source for exclusive content and highlights from WDW Pro, The Pro Show, and That Park Place for all the news that should be fun.